Hey everybody, Steven here, and today I'm doing an unboxing video for the Viotek GFI27QXA. Of course, like all of these monitors, that is a mouthful, but this is their 27-inch 4K monitor. It's 120 hertz that can be overclocked to 144. Now with this, I'm going to put a link for the hardware unbox video. That's going to be far more in depth than this video, or the review that I potentially am going to do with this. But with that, the guy covers the response time. So let's go over the specs, and then I'm going to kind of cover the problem that he ran into with this, and we're going to see if we can notice these things. So obviously 4K, 120 hertz, overclocked to 144 hertz, 1 millisecond response time, HDR. This is an IPS panel. With this, it says G-Sync ready, and then we have FreeSync with it. This is a FreeSync monitor, so I don't think it's G-Sync certified. I think it's G-Sync compatible. It has HDMI 2.0, it has two of those, and then it has two DP 1.4. The stand is adjustable, so you're going to have the height, tilt, swivel, and pivot adjustment with this. So this also has built-in speakers, I believe. So you can VESA mount this. This is going to be 75 millimeter by 75 millimeter. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. I'm probably going to do some B-roll with the stand, but I may end up just taking off my Acer here and then just VESA mounting this so that I can use both of these. But with this, it does say it has speakers, and then we have the audio input with this. This is $599 with free shipping. Normally it's $750, so $600. Big draw here was, one, the price tag. When you're looking at a lot of these other 4K monitors, they're going to be that 120, 144 hertz. I mean, they're usually close to $1,000, right? There's one other brand that Hardware Unboxed did that he actually said was really, really good. I'll have a link for that video as well. I almost went with that. I'm just forgetting the brand name. It's an off-brand. And decided to go with this one because this ended up being a little bit cheaper. But let's get this thing unboxed while I talk about the big thing here, which is the refresh rate. In order to get the 144 hertz, you have to plug in two DP cables, two 1.4 DP cables. So one, you got to make sure your GPU has that. I have a 2080 Ti. I haven't gotten my hands on a 3080 yet. Fingers crossed I can get that in the next couple months. The big draw for this was Cyberpunk is coming out. I wanted to get a monitor where I could play that in 4K. I'm just hoping this thing hits 60 frames in 4K, to be honest. If I get my hands on a 3080, maybe we can get 90, 120, we'll see. I'm not worried about the 144 hertz. But it is kind of a downside to have to plug in two DP cables to get 144 in overdrive mode. But the big thing here was the response time. It's almost like there's two... The panel's like split in half. And if you watch this video, you'll see that the left half has a certain response time, and then the right half has a certain response time. They're slower than the 1 millisecond. I'm assuming this is going to be MPRT and not gray to gray with the response time. I need to look a little bit deeper into that. But just based off his video, it's not 1 millisecond. And he had... the Viotek sent him another one, and he still had the issue. So I'm just curious about ghosting with this. But let's get this thing unboxed here. Power block. We have our stand. Stand's going to be pretty basic. I believe this does have some lighting on the bottom of it. Power cable. In this, you're going to have VESA mount screws. They are the larger ones too, so I'm going to need that with this actual arm here. I like when they include that. Of course, you get the Viotek screwdriver there. Looks like we're getting HDMI and DP on this. Or are we getting two DP cables? Let us see here. Because if you have to have two, I'm wondering if they send you two. DP. And DP. So they do send you two DP cables with this. Is this the little box deal? So yeah, if you're gonna do the little plastic box around it, I don't ever do that. So, and then we have our arm here, like this. This should just clip in, or no, we have screws. All right, we'll have to screw that in. And then here is our panel. There it is. So a couple different things I'm gonna have to get used to. One, this is not curved, so this is a flat panel. I haven't had a flat panel in a while. There's the back. So on the back, yeah, we'll have the two HDMI, the two DP, audio out, DC in. And I think this is the light strip on the back here. And then yeah, you can screw in that little box if you want to, the view box if you want to actually do that. So what I need to do now is get this thing screwed on to this. I'll start with this, and then like I said, I'll probably end up VESA mounting this after that. All right, so all set up. That took just a second. I like that Viotek always gives you an extra screw also with this. So screwed in the kind of base here, and then did the arm to the actual monitor. It's thrown me off the size. I'm not used to, I usually, like I said, play on a 32-inch monitor. So going back down to the 27 is taking me a second. And then when you use curved monitors for a while, especially something like the G5 or the G7 that has that 1000R curve, and then you go back to flat, it almost seems like it's bending away from me. So instead of curving towards me, it's actually curving away from me. So my eyes are gonna have to adjust to that. But let's look at the adjustment here just with the stand. Forward just a little bit. So yeah, we can do the height adjustment here. Definitely feels a little bit stiff. Most are, that feels a little stiffer than the other ones that I've used. So we can tilt right there. Doesn't have a ton of rotation, although with a smaller monitor I'm not going to need a ton. And then and then it does, yeah, if you wanted to actually kind of swivel this, you could. So coloring out of the box, I'm gonna have to tweak that. And then I'll look at their presets also. By default, it's obviously going to be in 4K, but also at that 120 hertz. You don't have access to even do the 144 unless you plug in the second DP cable. I'll probably test it. I don't know, like I said, I'm probably not even gonna play in that. I think 4K at 120 is gonna be hard enough for most GPUs to hit anyways. Like, I'm not worried about 144. To me, the difference between the two, it's there, but my hope is really just 4K 120 or anything above 60, to be honest. So with this, I'll do that. I'll hop into some games, obviously. So I'm gonna make sure that I play this out with some games, but I need to check the UFO test. I need to see what type of ghosting I'm going to see in that, and then if I'm noticing it in any games, because the response time with this does have me a little bit worried. So we're going to cut ahead. I'm going to spend a little bit of time with this, and then I want to cover UFO tests, showcase games, talk a little bit more about the specs, like pixel density, things like that with this, and then kind of wrap everything up. I'll probably put this, like I said, on the actual monitor arm. I'm not just going to leave it like this sitting here. The stand, it's stable. It's not anything special. You don't get any extras with this. Keep that in mind too. No extra USB ports, anything like that. I need to toy around with the menu settings as well, so I'll talk about that, and then we'll wrap everything up. So let's go ahead and cut ahead and get a little bit more in depth with this monitor. All right, so I'm back. I've spent some time with this, and there's a lot I want to cover. Let's go over the specs again really quick. And I'm going to make sure a lot of B-roll is going on, just showcasing the different games that I played with this too, so you guys don't have to just stare at me. You actually get to see this thing in action. But this thing weighs, with a stand, I'm assuming it's 13.45 pounds, 27-inch IPS panel, 4K, 16:9 aspect ratio. It goes up to 120 hertz, and then you can overclock it to 144 utilizing the two DP cables. We have 16.7 million colors with this. The sRGB scale is 122%. This is 96% of the NTSC color scale, 91% of the Adobe RGB scale, and then 90% of the DCI-P3 color scale. Contrast ratio is 1,000 to 1. Dynamic contrast ratio is 1,000,000 to 1. Brightness is 350 candela per meter squared. That's the pixel deal, but 350 CD/M2. And then we have 2 DP 1.4 ports, and then 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. This can tilt -5 to 15 degrees, plus or minus 2 degrees. This can swivel -45 to plus 45 degrees with this. Built-in speakers. I looked around and I couldn't find the watt of these, the wattage. I'm assuming they're 2. They don't sound very good. Don't count on the speakers of this. They're there. You could use them if you absolutely had to. But I mean, just plug in a headset or find you some good external speakers. They're really, like, I don't know, tinny, if that's the good word. It sounds like it's like in an echo chamber or something like that. It just sounds like there's a lot of like noise to it with this. We have AMD FreeSync. This is G-Sync compatible. Matter of fact, when I booted it up, it actually turned that on for me. I've tried it without it and with it. And it's actually on right now, and it seems to run really well outside of, I don't know if there was some flickering that it was causing with Doom. I only saw it twice, and I couldn't replicate it, so maybe it was just a fluke with that, but I tried it with it on and off. And then it's HDR 400 compliant with this, and I'll talk about that again here in a second. It does have picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture. I don't use that, and this is such a small screen. I don't know how much you would actually want to use that, to be honest. Anti-glare treated screen. You do have the monitor hood. I'm not going to use that. It does have blue light filter. As far as I've been able to find, Viotek uses Samsung panels. So this is going to be a Samsung panel. The buttons on the back, the menu system, it's okay. You have multiple buttons with this. It's the same layout that I found on the Dark Matter ultra wide that I just did for the channel here a couple weeks ago. Not a huge fan of the layout, but it's okay. I do like the single button menu style that a lot of companies are starting to utilize with this. The presets with this are actually pretty decent. This is actually a preset right here. This is the FPS preset. I did my own color tweaking and then checked the presets again, and then ended up landing on this one, left it. I did tweak the colors again in the NVIDIA control panel. I'm still tinkering with that a little bit. I do like a more vibrant, probably high contrast screen than I think a lot of other people are gonna like. Maybe down the road will do a video on my settings with this. But I did, like I said, turn on the FPS one and then tweaked some settings with that. And this does lean a little red. So I did turn down red in the NVIDIA control panel for the color temperature here down to, I think, 47 instead of it being at 50 across the board. I noticed when I went a little bit lower than that, then it started leaning very blue. I don't want that, but it just had a little bit of a red that I could see show up in some websites and things like that. I didn't like that. I wasn't able to get a good video of the black screen bleed with this, or the light bleed. It's there. It's comparable to any of the other monitors I've used. It's not horrific by any stretch, but you're going to see a handful of spots with some of that. But it's not bad. So let's talk about some other stuff with this. Like I said, a lot to cover. Games. I played Doom. I played Red Dead Redemption, Halo, and then Cyberpunk 2077 with this. I wanted to do the fast-paced games with, like, Doom, for instance. You tweak the settings, and that's where it's like, all right, I can actually hit the 120, and it looks phenomenal with this. Colors pop, the resolution is great. I'm using medium settings at that point, medium and high settings, to actually hit that. If you go Nightmare or Ultra with it, like, you're not going to hit that. So that looked really good. Halo played at the 120, looked phenomenal. You get into like Red Dead Redemption, and then you get into Cyberpunk, especially with the ray tracing. Okay, now we're pulling like 30s, like 38. Like Red Dead was 40. It was 38 to like 48 is where I would kind of hold. I was usually towards 48, but if I started getting into a lot of action, it may drop down. So are you willing to sacrifice the FPS? Now, keep in mind, GPU is going to be a huge part of that. I'm rocking the 2080 Ti. I don't have a 3080 or 3090. I'm going to get better performance with that. Maybe I am hitting that 60 FPS in Red Dead. And I'm using the same thing, a mixture of medium-high settings to actually achieve that. Are you willing to sacrifice some of those things? Maybe you turn things down to medium-low to get better FPS. That kind of seems like the trade out there isn't worth it. So slower paced games, I don't notice, because when I'm playing on a 1440p monitor, I'm getting usually 70 to 90, right? So we're dropping maybe 20, 30 frames. Am I noticing a massive difference? No. Am I noticing a difference? Yes. It's not deal breaker. I like the 4K resolution, so I played for a good while with that. And I get to luckily switch back and forth depending on kind of what I'm in the mood for. And I can always turn this to 1440p if I wanted to, if that was something that you just wanted higher FPS for that, for whatever reason. You could always just change the resolution. It's going to be a while before you're hitting 120 in those AAA games. Cyberpunk, I mean, I messed with that a while. With ray tracing on, like mid 30s, sometimes I'd even drop into like the upper 20s, like 28, 29. So then I tweak those. I went a little bit lower with the setting. It's like, all right, now I can play this. We're same thing with Red Dead. We're getting like 38 to 48. It plays pretty smooth outside of all the bugs that it has right now. And it looks phenomenal. Just the visual fidelity of 4K, layer on that ray tracing, and it's like photorealistic. It looked great. But it's a slower paced game until you get into some action. If I was playing Doom like that, I'd be very disappointed. So Doom hitting the 120, that is the ideal experience. Halo, older game, but it still looks amazing in 4K. So gaming was really, really good, just depending on what you were playing. And I think you have to have that mindset if you're going to go into this. One, what's the setup do you have, right? And then with that, what are you primarily playing, and can your hardware potentially get at least above 60 FPS with those, maybe push towards that 120. Now, I did say I wasn't going to do the 144 hertz. I did. I plugged it in. You go into the NVIDIA control panel, and then you can actually enable the 144 hertz with that. And once you actually do that, and you do enable something in the menu here to turn it into like overdrive mode in the menu, and then it'll pop up. And it worked. Doom was hitting about 138. You could see it moves really quick, but it was holding close to 138. And it did play a little bit smoother than the 120. And it looked phenomenal. I mean, I could tell that slight jump and increase in performance. And that's how, with that game, if I played it a ton all the time, I may do that. I may do the overdrive mode and actually play the 144 the whole time with a game like that. Now, that's one of those things where, yeah, it'll do it in that game, but I mentioned Red Dead and Cyberpunk. I'm probably not going to hit that. Like, I'm just not going to hit 144 hertz in those games, so there's no point to it. Because what happens when you enable that, you're actually going to lose HDR support, and with that, and it says FreeSync. So you lose HDR and FreeSync. Luckily, I didn't see any screen tearing or anything like that. That wasn't an issue at all. But you do lose that, and so you're going to sacrifice something. So I did enable HDR. I've been very vocal on the channel. It's just not something I typically play games in. I don't leave it on. I do it to for the tests and things like that, and then I don't really go beyond that. But I was surprised. I was very curious to see, what does HDR in 4K look like? Playing in Doom with HDR, that's where it makes sense. I'm really hopeful that with the next couple years, we're starting to see 120 4K, hopefully at more of a 32-inch size. I'll talk about that here in a second. And we get that more as a standard, and the HDR support hopefully getting up to the 1000 nits. But with 400, it looked really good. It was for at least me, in my personal opinion, it was a very visible jump in HDR performance on this compared to the other monitors, like my Acer here, or the Samsung G5. So I was actually pleasantly surprised by that. Now, ghosting, hardware unboxed, Steve doing his tests. I'll have the link for that video. I know there's a lot of buzz about hardware unboxed and Steve and the NVIDIA stuff that went down. And I'll put some links for those as well for you guys, so you guys can definitely check out his channel. Him and his partner, they have a really good channel going on over there. But his test, the panel was like it was split. He was having ghosting, and he was getting different response time readings on the left and the right side. As an average gamer, as I boot this up, I don't have that test equipment. I can't show you that. What I can show you guys is, and I'm filming on my phone, my iPhone 12 Pro, both with this monitor, the UFO test at 960 pixels, 1440 pixels, and 3840 pixels. And I'm doing that with the 2DP cables, so you guys get to see with the 144 hertz and then with the 120 hertz to see the difference. It's, in my opinion, hard to pick up on. Is there ghosting? Yes, every monitor that I've owned has ghosting. Did I notice it more than any of my other monitors? Honestly, not really. Now, when you do the overdrive mode with this, I don't know if that increases it to the 1 millisecond response time, because usually this is 5 millisecond response time, gray to gray, and then you do the overdrive, which I believe is how you're enabling the 144 hertz, and it goes to the 1 millisecond response time. Did I notice a huge difference between the two? Not necessarily. Is it going to be there? Probably. If you're an average gamer, probably not going to notice it much. With this, you're going to notice some level of ghosting. Like I mentioned, any monitor I've tested, I've noticed some level of ghosting with that. But it's all outside of the dark matter one, which is more apparent than the other ones. They're there. There's a subtleness to it, and this is very comparable to any of the other monitors that I've reviewed and tested on the channel. Outside of the dark matter, that one, like I said, it had some very apparent ghosting. I don't know, maybe Steve just got two, and he had two different ones that he tested. Maybe he just got some really bad panels back to back. I don't know. I think for the average gamer, you're not going to notice it. If you're a hardcore gamer, you might. It might be something that you're just more tuned into that, especially if you're playing FPS games and the response time, ghosting, screen tearing, anything like that matters to a very high degree because you're wanting that competitive edge. But mentioning screen tearing, I didn't notice any. Even in overdrive, when we're doing the 144 hertz and FreeSync is turned off, in Doom Eternal, I didn't notice anything. But that's the only game I played because I knew that was the only one that I would hit the 144 hertz potentially. And I did notice at least a subtle difference turning that on with opening apps and Windows and things like that. On Windows 10 here, it just seemed a little bit smoother. So for that, it's going to have an improvement. So ghosting, you guys can make your own decision on that. I don't think it's going to be an issue for casual gamers, for enthusiasts. You start becoming like that hardcore enthusiast where you're wanting the best and the latest, and you do pay attention a lot more to those things. You're probably going to notice it. You may be disappointed. So overall, I'm extremely happy with this thing. Downside, the extras. I don't really care about the lighting on the back with this. You don't get extra USB ports. The menu is kind of lackluster. The stand does a lot, but it's in terms of actually I have it just sitting right here. In terms of like the aesthetics of it, it's nothing to write home about. It's pretty plain looking in my opinion, but it's one of those things. You're getting 4K 120, not all the bells and whistles and the extras that you may be looking for, something to consider. But for me personally, I get to play 4K at a cheaper price point of $600, and I'm not paying $800, $1,000, $1,200, $1,400, $1,500, $2,000 for these. things that this is going to cover, at least the basics with this. The other big thing for me is the curve. I do wish it was curved. I didn't realize how much I've actually kind of adapted to that, because this is an 1800 R curve panel with my Acer here. This is flat. Going to a flat panel, it almost seems like it's bending away from me. It's odd. So I do wish this was curved. So I'm hopeful, like I said, for the future in a couple years where we have 32-inch, we have the 4K, 120, 144 hertz, and then we have a subtle curve, at least 1800 R curve with this. But like I said, overall, I'm extremely happy. 160 pixels per inch, I believe, with this. And then your average, and this is 27-inch, obviously, with this. So if we did have it as a 32, that would go down. But you notice the difference with this when you come from a 1440p 32-inch where it's 93 pixels per inch and you jump up to 163. That's a huge difference. Everything is very smooth and clear on this monitor. And then an average 27-inch has 180 or 108 pixels per inch, right? So 163 up from 108 with going from 1440p to the 4K. So that's a lot that I covered there. Hopefully that helps you guys. Best mount, by the way, 75 millimeter by 75 millimeter, which is what I have this attached to right here. But hopefully that helps you guys make a informed decision with this. I was surprised after watching Steve's video. I was kind of wary about ghosting and everything with this, and at least for me, not an issue. Not really an issue at all. So I'm pleasantly surprised by this, and I'm excited to do more gaming, not only with Cyberpunk, but with fast-paced games like Doom, where I get to actually play 4K, 120, 144 hertz, and have a very smooth 4K experience. So that's going to be it for this video, everybody. I'm going to have a link for this in the description so you guys can actually find it there. If there's anything that I didn't cover, let me know in the comment section. I'll make sure that I do that. I'm on the fence about doing a review for this or not, just because I think Steve did do a really, really good job, but we shall see with that. So that's going to be it. If you guys like the video, hit the like button for me. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me also. Thanks so much for watching.